Good deal. We're almost done here now. All right, cool. Let's get started. Only a few of you here. So if you could see and hear me, let me know in the chat. You're a producer, I'm a producer. Let's talk. Let's talk about this subject. So this will be a little interactive today. So first off, let me know that you can see and hear me in the chat, and that way I could get moving. So I see some of you guys are looking over here. So in the chat, let me know that you can see and hear me. Say hello. And the question I have for you is, what do you think is the most important element to creating music, to creating quality music that's releasable, that you're proud of on a regular basis? What's the number one thing and number one skill that you need to have in order to finish songs? Hey, Adam. Hey, Paul. Good to hear from both of you. What do you guys think is the most important thing, or what do you think is the most important thing that's holding you back from finishing release quality songs pretty consistently? Patience. It's a good one. Although patience comes after you've got the skills to make your music. It does take some patience to learn, but in my opinion, you could learn how to make music faster than you think. The patience part, I think, comes down to getting the recognition that you think you deserve once you're making what you think are really good quality songs. That can sometimes take some patience, because oftentimes, I'd say 95% of the time, us as artists don't feel like we're getting the respect that we feel we deserve. But what you also got to consider is every other artist feels the same way, so it's nothing new, but that wouldn't be, in my opinion, the most important thing. Sometimes the song is perfect, but you won't convince yourself that it's ready. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Heather, good to see you in here. Mastering, no, that wouldn't be, mastering is definitely important, but as I train people on, mastering is something that you shouldn't really deal with at all. The fact of the matter is, if you can't make a great sounding mix, pre-master, that is what we call it, then you kind of have no business getting into the realm of mastering. I used to do mastering 20 years back. I worked with a lot of bands and different things like that. And I did the mastering for my home, and I had a pretty good, setup for sound. Now my studio is not really geared for mastering because it really takes a hell of an ear, really good equipment, and that takes some patience as well. So mastering is a good guess, but that would not be the thing that's going to get you to finish more songs. I wouldn't say that's your biggest challenge. If you're thinking about mastering, you think mastering is going to solve the problem, is because your mix is not up to par. And since you feel insecure about your mix, you think that the solution is mastering. And mastering can only do its job if you do your job of making a great sounding mix, okay? But that's what I'm getting either, actually. Other guesses I fell in. Heather did. Appreciate you guys being here and commenting. So yeah, what do you guys think is the greatest challenge to you finishing songs consistently, songs that you're proud of, songs that you think are releasable? Where do you think you're getting stuck most? If you don't get this down, then nothing else is going to matter. None of the YouTube videos that you're watching are going to matter. None of the courses or tutorials are going to matter. None of the training that you do is going to matter. Uh, None of your good intentions is going to matter. Paul, you said motivation. I think motivation does fall kind of in the category of where I'm going, but it's not exactly it. So, what I believe to be the most important aspect of music making, yeah, passion, obviously, but there's a lot of unsuccessful people out here um, that are very passionate and are pretty motivated. All right, so looks like I just froze up. So hopefully some of you guys will jump back in pretty quickly. Um, my apologies to everyone that was logged in and here. I do have a comment from Adam. I know Adam will probably be jumping back on, hopefully. So what Adam says is, I'm still trying to connect my Windows XP laptop to the internet and turn Ableton Live Lite 6 from demo to full working. As soon as I get them working, I'll let you know. Yeah, Ableton Lite is a really great way. Oh, look at that. The autofocus is always screws up on me. Hold on. I'm just going to turn that off. Should be good. Yeah, Ableton Lite is it's an intro. They've got Ableton Intro, Ableton Lite. They're both fairly similar. And working with the demo, what I would recommend to you is just go straight to the 90-day demo of Ableton Suite. It gives you everything, all the tools, all the effects, the newest, fullest version. Normally, it's only a 30-day trial, and they've just made it available for 90 days. So if you haven't signed up for the free trial, I would recommend doing that. That way you can really start to learn Ableton and understand its full capability. In fact, in 90 days it's possible, if you get some training. I've had a lot of students where they joined the coaching program and they didn't even have Ableton yet, so they grabbed the 30-day demo and would go through my course, and by the end of the course they would have 1 or 2 songs completed that so before the demo was out, they'd be able to both save their project, so if they ever bought Ableton completely, or if they went up to their friends who had a legit copy of Ableton, they'd be able to reopen their file, but they were also able to render down their final mix and that sort of thing. So theoretically, you could actually get signed before you even buy the program if you get the right training, or if you already have enough knowledge to do all the steps in getting a great sounding song. Yeah, Adam, that's what I would recommend to you. Let's get the 90-day trial. So I don't have too many of you here, but I hope that the ones that are watching get into this. What we were talking about is, what is the one thing that, if you had this sorted out, the rest of your music production would more or less start to fall into place? Because without this, all the amount of motivation, passion, intention, work, watching the tutorials, all that stuff's not really going to matter. Which is why most of the courses that you have taken, if you've taken any courses, if you've paid for any courses or taken free courses, or spent a lot of time on YouTube, just binging videos, I can almost guarantee that 95% of you did get a transformation out of all that information. And the problem is you're simply not organized. Being organized is much more important than all the other stuff. And this doesn't just mean being organized with your music. It means more or less being organized with your outside space, being organized with your life. Um, if you're organized, then every song you do is going to be an uphill battle. And trust me, I've been there. When I was there, the best I could probably do is maybe finishing 4 songs in about a year, right? And even though I'll admit that some of those songs I was proud of, and I'm still proud of some of those songs, it was a lot of work, a lot of unnecessary work. In fact, one song took a year and a half to finish. It was just simply because I wasn't organized. My studio was a clusterfuck. I didn't quite know what I was doing in the DAW as much as I should. I was using Fruity Loops before they had FL Studio, and I never really got into the arrangement window part of Fruity Loops. Never really connected with me. So I used to build my loops and stuff in Fruity Loops, and then I would render out those loops, bring it into a program called Acid, and then I would do my mixing in Acid. That was before I transitioned into using Ableton. Anyway, back to your organization, all right? Let me read you a little something. See if you could connect to this, all right? Because I guarantee if you get this, if you are able to get yourself organized, you can absolutely triple your music output. Me personally, once I got myself organized, I was able to 10x the amount of songs I was able to do. Where in the past I was able to kind of, like I said, make like maybe 4 to 5 songs a year. When I got my shit together, when I got organized, that changed massively, and I was able to finish 52 songs in 13 months. So almost a song a week, which is a pretty darn good average, right? Some songs faster, some songs slower, but they averaged out to about a song a week. So it's kind of nice to think that anytime you sit down, you're about a week away from finishing your song if you're organized consistently. All right. So the first thing is I discovered, and actually I discovered this not necessarily through music production, but because I was suffering in the early 2000s a lot with panic disorder. I used to have really massive panic attacks, sometimes 3 or 4 a day, or sometimes I'd just be in a constant state of panic, which if you've never experienced it, I would never want you to experience it. It's a different kind of hell. Let's just put it that way. And in trying to deal with my mental disorder, and I didn't want to take medication, so I was trying to figure out ways that I could cope. And what I found is that when I organized my outside space, when I organized my physical space on the outside, I started finding that it was also organizing the inside, organizing my brain on the inside. So the less clutter I had on the outside, it seemed to translate to the amount of clutter I have on the inside. Does that make sense? I know this sounds kind of woo-woo or whatever, but I swear to God, this is the truth. And this really made a massive difference for me. You know, so part of getting organized on this level was dumping the clutter out of my brain. That was huge. And then organizing my space on the outside. So that was kind of the foundation for me kind of making like a huge discovery. And it really helped me. I wouldn't say it solved my panic issues, but it definitely brought it down massively and brought me to a more often state of relaxation and comfort. So how does this relate to music? Well, going through kind of my clusterfuck way of pulling all these ideas that I had learned in making music and kind of just throwing it together like, with duct tape and everything, and trying to like make a professional song by putting all these pieces together was a hell of a task and a lot more work for finishing songs. So I went down all those rabbit holes of being on forums and trying to figure out what the best compressor was, what plugin should I use, and basically watching everyone just argue and have different opinions on forums and different things like that. So that didn't help me get anywhere. That just confused me more because all it did was fill my head with more opinions. What I was going to do was I had to get rid of that clutter. I had to get rid of the clutter of binging on videos. So I'm not saying watching videos is a bad thing, but you need to know when and why you're doing it, and you need to kind of set yourself a time limit. And the organization part really comes down to when you open your DAW. I'm assuming most of you following me are Ableton users or are aspiring to use Ableton, but it really doesn't matter whatever DAW you're using. The point is that you need to have your DAW organized so that when you start, you're not fumbling around trying to find samples and drum sounds and going through all your, you've probably got a huge, massive sample library. You probably bought a bunch of sample packs. You probably got a lot of choices. And too many choices, that is exactly the thing that will slow you down, all right? That's the thing that's going to take away the magic of creative flow. Having too many choices and not being sure what choice to make. So you need to learn how to organize that part of your process. So when you open up your DAW, you've done the work, right? The sounds are ready for you. You understand what kinds of sounds are needed to get a song going in your style. You've created some sort of a template of your favorite plugins and some of your favorite sounds so you can really quickly get a beat. The way I like to look at it, I come from the background of being in bands, and I played guitar. So, I didn't play every instrument. I walked in and my job was to play rhythm guitar. And sometimes I would either have an idea in my head or I would want to kind of create an idea on the spot. And what we would do, or what I would do, is I'd have our drummer, only actually one version of the bands I was in had a drummer. We used drum machines, or I used drum machines in most of the bands, but one of the bands we had a drummer. And it's kind of the same thing either way. But what you do is if you've got your drummer, you tell the drummer, hey, play this kind of rhythm that we did in this other song. Let's start with that and see if I can get inspired with some other ideas on guitar. You know what I mean? So I kind of got a feel of, play something familiar, a beat that we used in another song, and then we could kind of change it up once I get something going. And that always made it much easier for me. It took a lot of work off my plate. I let the drummer kind of do that thing of giving me something to inspire me. Well, you kind of need to have the ability to do that as well, is whether you've got some basic drum parts that kind of fit your style, that kind of inspire you, start with kind of a basic beat of some sort to get yourself inspired. And then what you do is you just kind of edit that beat as you start getting inspired for sound. This is much easier than starting from scratch with no sounds, nothing. You don't know what you're doing. And you're going through you're spending hours just going through trying to find the right drum sounds and that sort of thing. Before you even have an idea, you're already bogged down with being way too unorganized. Does that make sense to you guys? Because a lot of people don't talk about this. So there's nothing really sexy about saying, hey, if you want to be a great producer, get your shit together. You know what I mean? Um, Instead, someone wants to hear that there's a magic sound that you can make that will crush everyone, and suddenly you'll be a master at your art of production. Until tomorrow, when the new sound comes around, and now you got to learn the whole new thing again, because what you're doing is you're chasing instead of developing who you are. So that's another thing that a lot of people do. They're afraid to have their own opinions, so they chase the opinions of other people. They chase the sounds of other people. That doesn't mean you shouldn't constantly be inspired. I'm constantly borrowing and sometimes somewhat blatantly stealing ideas from multiple sources in order to kind of influence. But what I understand is that everything that I steal will kind of filter through my own personality. So it never comes out. It never spits out the same as the way it came in. You know, it's like having a really great filter plugin, right? That kind of spits out random things from sound, right? That sort of process is really important as well. But if you're not organized, if you don't have your shit together, all the other stuff doesn't really matter. Your brain's not going to work and it's not going to get into flow, and you're not going to have built the habits that are necessary to feed your creative brain. I can't give that percentage, but let's just say about 40% of your energy goes to your brain just doing basic repeated tasks. All right? These are all the things that are your basic habits. These are all the things that you don't really even need to think about. It's all the things where you're doing the same things today that you were doing yesterday, right? And your brain's comfortable doing that, but even that takes up a lot of resources that we don't realize, right? Another thing that takes up a lot of resources is processing food. So if you're not watching what you're eating and what you're feeding yourself, then you're fatiguing your body, fatiguing your brain, and you are not going to be able to get the most out of the most from your brain. You know, if your brain's not working for you, then everything else falls apart. So what you really need to consider is that creativity requires new thinking, okay? And new thinking requires even more than that 40% of the energy that, you know, your body just needs to do its basic shit. So when you don't have something on autopilot and it requires thinking and it just requires decision making, I'd say on average, even if you've kind of got yourself organized, you might have a total of 90 minutes to 2 hours of actual thinking time, where you're actually creatively thinking of something new. This could be writing lyrics. This could be producing your song. It could be working on your mix. It could be getting inspired for the actual starting idea, right? So what's really important is you need to have all your other shit in place so that the parts that you're good at fall into place, so that the things that are difficult to you, the things that really require thinking and creativity, you could put your focus on that. So for example, instead of obsessing over a kick drum sound, right? And trying to create it from scratch, because I've got to make every sound from scratch, otherwise I'm cheating. Well, actually what you're doing is you're cheating yourself of the energy that you need for other things. So why not just use a sample to get the right kick drum sound, snare sound, so that you can put your mental energy into, let's say, writing your bass line or making that one particular lead sound or whatever it is that really makes your song unique. That's where you should focus your energy, and you should try to find shortcuts to get all the other work done and try to get that stuff on autopilot. Because once again, if you use your time wisely and you've got your shit organized and you've dumped all the shit out of your brain before you started working, you're going to have more of a clear mind that's ready to take input. But once again, you've only got about 90 minutes to 2 hours of real creative thinking, okay? Creative thinking takes a lot of work, and a lot of people think that they're using their brain constantly, but what they're really doing 90% of the time, including myself, is on autopilot, all right? Let me give you kind of an example. I am not the best camera guy, right? I think I'm a little bit better at writing than I am at speaking, okay? I say all the time. It's not something I'm super great at. So doing this requires a certain amount of thinking energy because this doesn't come natural to me, right? So if I'm going to do these things, I have to do this sort of thing before I dive my brain into a bunch of other stuff. Because otherwise I'm going to deplete my brain of the energy and the clarity that's required to do something like this. But if I were to do this every day, right, eventually this would kind of go on autopilot. And this wouldn't require much energy. I could get into the flow real easily. Once your brain has done something enough, it puts it kind of in memory. So it can do things on autopilot. And then you just kind of poke out with these new ideas, and it doesn't take up so much resources. As is, since I do these every day, every time I come to this, it takes a while to get into any sort of flow or any sort of comfort. So it requires more brain thinking. As you're sitting out with a song in blank slate, and all you got is somewhat of an idea of what you want to create, but you haven't put the tools together, you haven't built a template for your music. So you got to go through this whole process of getting yourself just to a starting point. You know what I mean? Imagine if it took thinking energy to put your clothes on, and thinking energy to make your bed, and thinking energy to take a shower. You'd be so depleted all that stuff that you wouldn't be able to actually do any creative work. Adam says, working out is good for your health, and it helps motivate me. Yeah, I'll be perfectly honest. I try to work out. I do some yoga and that sort of thing, but I found, like, as far as weight loss or anything like that, and not that I have a huge problem with that. I'm a pretty skinny guy, but that cardio doesn't really do that. It's kind of more diet related. So since I always got better results for my body with the way I ate, I kind of neglected the working out aspect, and I've discovered that I go through periods of fatigue really, really easily, and I'm trying to find my way out of fatigue. And the last thing you want to do when you feel fatigued is work out. But just like with meditation, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but they say if you say you don't have time to meditate, then you need to meditate twice as much. It'll benefit you twice as much as well. And that's where I think I'm at with exercise or doing some sort of cardio. Cardio, it's healthy, but I think the most important thing for me is it's really good for the brain. It helps clear out the clutter. And it also physically clears out the toxins in your brain as well. So it can clear up brain fog. And brain fog is something that I go through a lot. Once again, probably because of my panic disorder, which doesn't really bother me as much, but I think it gives me fatigue as opposed to panic these days. Do I think posting these musical ideas on social media platforms help? Sharing on SoundCloud and such? Yes and no. I think the real issue with sharing is that the reason we share is for the reaction, right? The reason we do anything really is for the reaction, at least when it comes to social media. We don't post something without going back and checking to see how people responded, right? So if we post a song, oftentimes it slows us down and we're waiting for someone else to give us some sort of feedback before we feel we can move forward, right? And it's kind of a crutch that we use because we're afraid to have our own opinion. So, and another thing is, most people are not going to care about your music as much as you do. So I kind of recommend that you get your song to where you're proud of it. What I would consider doing though is having like a private, like saving some private stuff that you could show someone that you actually really trust who will be kind of brutally honest with you. Because you don't want someone just saying, hey, it's really good, and they don't really understand your style. That doesn't do you any good. It's much better to have someone that's that you look up to, that you think is kind of better at your style than you are. That way their opinion matters. Trying to get them to like what you're doing is going to matter. But then again, you got to hold your own confidence too. Sometimes you're going to agree or disagree with what they say. But the issue that I have with sharing your music, especially before it's done, is that if you're waiting for the reaction, then it slows you down from consistently making music, because you're waiting for that reaction. And you only want to move forward once you've had a reaction to the last thing you did. And I think it's really important for you to build up the habit of making your own decisions. And once again, these are things that require a lot of mental energy to do. So you have to challenge yourself almost first thing to make decisions, because otherwise you're not going to have the energy to do it. So you just don't want sharing to be a cop-out. There was another thing that I did years back. I called it my 1 hour club. And I had kind of a stream where I would post where I was at with my song every day. But the thing is, I didn't really wait for a reaction, right? What it was just my way of holding myself accountable. Like every day I have to show something, every day I have to show what I'm working on. And that just kept me happy. When I finished a song, I post what I finished, but I got to the point where I wasn't looking for a reaction at all. I was just trying to help motivate other people, and other people posted their work as well. So it just kept everyone kind of accountable, rather than for a reaction. When I finished a song, I was something like this, but part of the next working on, right? I just wouldn't take pause and think, what do people do this? Blah blah blah. That song's done. I let it go. My opinion doesn't matter anymore on that. It's out for the world to hear once I post it. Obviously when I release it, I might touch it up, or maybe the label will have something to say about a little touch up that they think is needed, and that's totally fine. But I'm on to the next thing. So while most people are waiting for a reaction, in the time that they're waiting for a reaction, I'm finishing 2 or 3 songs while they're finishing 1 song and waiting for someone to give them the thumbs up. You got to give that to yourself. You said, I guess it's important for feedback, but the latter it's a general assembly rather than talent. Yeah, well, I mean, what is talent really? Talent is continuous work towards a certain goal, right? Talent is you've done it so much that it becomes automatic. That's why talent is not necessarily difficult for the people that have gained the talent, right? Someone who can play the piano really well doesn't struggle to play the piano. They did obviously a lot of work, and probably getting there took some struggle because they're learning something new. But once it registers into your brain, it becomes very automatic. And once something becomes automatic, then you can kind of get into flow a lot easier. Hope that makes sense. So speaking on this organization, I'm putting together a 30-day course to help get you organized for making music much more consistently, and having more clarity in your brain, and having the clutter removed from your head. So when you sit down, you don't have as many decisions that you need to make. And you've got things organized, and you can kind of just really get started. And that way, every time you're starting a new song, it's not like climbing a mountain. It's almost like when you're finished with this song and you've climbed to the top of the mountain, the next song you're already halfway up the mountain, or a third of the way up the mountain. You know what I mean? So you've already got momentum. And I want to kind of show you how to get and reach that momentum. So I put together 10 assignments, And what's going to happen is we'll start June 1st. And you don't have to start on June 1st, and you can do this at your own pace. But the way that I'm going to go, so we can move with the group if you want to be involved that way, is you're going to have 3 days to accomplish each assignment, right? And each assignment, some of the assignments are not necessarily going to be immediately connected to your music making, but all the dots will connect towards the end, and you'll realize how much this opens you up for creative space. Obviously, some of the things are going to be technical, and some of the things are going to be directly in Ableton or whatever DAW you're using to get you organized. But it's not going to be all about that. And that's the thing that I think so many trainers and courses miss, is they think that they need to do everything in the DAW, when a lot of the preparation and the mental skills and habits need to come from beyond and outside that, so that when you do sit down at the DAW, your brain is in the right mode. Otherwise, none of the things you learn are really going to stick. You know what I mean? So if that's something that's interesting to you, I just announced it yesterday. So I haven't yet had a ton of signups yet, mainly because I'm not just kicking off with a big sales thing. I want to give people value, give some people something to think about. But if you're interested in taking this 30-day journey, it's really, really inexpensive. My bigger 30-day course is $997. Okay, this course is only going to be $47, and the first 10 people that jump in are going to be able to get in for just $37. So you'll get $10 off if you join now, and the link is down here in the information if you're interested. So if this is something that's resonating with you, and if it's not resonating with you and you just want kind of a quick fix, or if you're just looking to learn a certain plugin, or if you're only interested in learning how to use Serum or whatever, this isn't really the course for you at all. But if you really want to get to the fundamentals, you're able to pull more out of it, and you're able to feel more organized, and music seems to become more immediate to you, and decision making becomes much more simple to you. This is going to be a really great course to your productivity. Yeah, interesting to down. So not many slide left. If you're okay, it's kind of a parable, and from all 7 hits. All right, and Stephen Covey, really good book. I haven't actually read the book in a while, but I have read the book, and it's a lot of things stuck with me. So this is from the book. It says, suppose you were to come upon someone in the woods working feverishly to saw down a tree. What are you doing, you ask. Can't you see? Comes the impatient reply. I'm sawing down this tree. You look exhausted, you exclaim. How long have you been at it? He says, over 5 hours, and I'm beat. This is hard work. Well, why don't you take a break for a few minutes and sharpen that saw? I'm sure it would go a lot faster. And the man replies, I don't have time to sharpen the saw. I'm too busy sawing. So the question is this you? Are you so busy sawing that you're not taking the time to sharpen the saw? Here's a quote from Abraham Lincoln, and I like this, and it kind of goes with this parable. He says, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Think about that, all right? That's kind of what this course is meant to do, help you sharpen that axe. So when you do get to work consistently, the work will flow much easier, and it'll actually be less work, so it'll take a lot less out of you. So yeah, with that, guys, there's a link down at the bottom. If you got any questions, you can hit me up in the comments, or you can hit me up directly anytime I answer my messages. It's probably easier instead of message me in this group, which I don't check those messages as often, but if you find me, Jason Timothy, which is facebook.com/Jason Timothy with no spaces. You'll find me there, and you can message me there, and that is a messenger that I will check most often. So with that, guys, I hope you got something out of this. I hope you have a fantastic, productive day, whether you're in quarantine or whether you are one of the people on the front line. I appreciate all you guys. I hope you're doing well, and take the time you need for yourself to get organized. Thanks so much, and I'll speak to you guys real soon. Take care. Have a fantastic one. Stay safe.